Last week during my Patreon live stream, and yes, that is a really obvious plug to encourage you to go to patreon.com/Rebecca and join my fun nerd community. One patron asked what I thought of a Telegraph headline titled, "Meat is Crucial for Human Health, Scientists Warn." My patron couldn't read the article because it was behind a paywall, and I couldn't either. And not only do I not want to give the Telegraph any money, but I don't even want to give them my contact information for the coronation offer of 3 months free. Luckily, British tabloids operate like a human centipede in that the Telegraph takes in information and then poops it out directly into the Daily Mail's mouth, which they then reconfigure intestinally and then poop out as meat is crucial for human health, scientists say, as they call for end to the zealotry pushing vegetarian and vegan diets, an article you do not have to pay to read. I mean, you don't have to pay with fiat currency. You pay with your sanity. Like you can only look at this for so long. That said, I was able to get the gist before I was swallowed by the maw of madness. The initial food for the tabloid centipede came from a declaration, which is this thing that scientists love to do when they all get together at a conference. Like, some scientific association will hold a conference somewhere, like Shitterton, Dorset, and everyone in the field flies there and they present their papers and they have their panel discussions. Then they go hit up the pubs and then things spin out of control. And the next thing you know, someone shouts, "Let's do a declaration." And then someone else pulls out a big sheet of poster board and a big fat marker. And by the time day breaks, everyone has agreed that the Shitterton Declaration is going to change the course of human events. In this case, the conference was held in Dublin, and so we are blessed with the Dublin Declaration of Scientists on the Societal Role of Livestock, published in a very special edition of Animal Frontiers. The host of the conference was Teagasc, which I'm not even going to try to pronounce correctly. It is the Irish Agriculture and Food Development Authority. The special edition of Animal Frontiers was published by the American Meat Science Association, an industry group. So the entire thing is a delicious, savory product of the meat industry, or big meat. Wait, that doesn't sound. Anyway, the very special carnivore issue argues in favor of meat eating with a few claims. Humans evolved to eat meat. Meat provides us with a lot of nutrients. People who are very poor and don't have meat lack important nutrients. Eating a lot of red meat isn't that bad for you, probably. We can't just get rid of all the livestock by snapping our fingers like Thanos, or we'd be left with a bunch of inedible biomass. The studies that all show the enormous impact of cow burps on climate change have some limitations. And finally, we should not worry about the ethical treatment of animals in the meat industry because poor people need to eat meat to survive. Obviously, I'm summing all of this up in a very mean way because honestly, I just don't think it's worth my time to go through this journal line by line and explain why it's ridiculous. Like, yeah, we shouldn't just get rid of all the livestock. No one is arguing we should. And yeah, it's hard to pinpoint exactly how bad red meat is when there are always confounding factors. And that's why researchers look at literally billions of data points and crunch those statistics every which way they can to come to a sort of wishy-washy conclusion that, yeah, a diet high in red meat is probably bad for you. Even a very skeptical systematic review found some evidence linking red meat to colorectal cancer, breast cancer, type 2 diabetes, and heart disease, though they call on more rigorous study before making an official recommendation to forego red meat. There's no health risk to not eating red meat, so yeah, I'm actually fine foregoing it, and it seems to me that the only people who really worry that there isn't enough evidence are the people who make a living selling you meat. Anyway, if you think I'm being unfair, you can go read this issue in full if you'd like to. The link, as always, is in the transcript linked below. Public access to scientific research remains a huge problem, but the nice thing about propaganda is that they pretty much always want everyone to read it. So enjoy. While this may seem pretty tame as propaganda goes, the proof is in the pudding, by which I mean the science pudding that was fed to the Telegraph and then the Daily Mail. This not particularly revelatory journal issue produced by the meat industry turned into the attention-grabbing headline, "Meat is crucial for human health, scientists warn." It's not, actually. Meat is crucial for human health for humans who can't afford or don't have the understanding of health to eat a nutritious meat-free diet. Scientists warn. Ugh, doesn't sound as good, does it? I'm not sure what PETA is up to these days, but other than them, I can't think of any vegan or vegetarian who would argue for the entire population of humans to suddenly completely stop eating meat. The actual suggestion that I make is for everyone to reduce their consumption of meat in whatever way they reasonably can, whether that means going vegan or doing meatless Mondays. Because the simple fact of the matter is that according to researchers, even if everyone in the world stopped using fossil fuels right this moment, we still wouldn't be able to stop global warming at 1.5 degrees Celsius because of the emissions from our food system alone. Forget about whether or not eating red meat is killing us through cancer. We have become so addicted to eating as much meat as we can that it's actually killing the planet. And the meat industry knows that, which is why, much like the fossil fuel industry, they are fully ramping up their propaganda machine, as documented in this excellent Guardian piece published this week. A 5-year strategy document written in 2020 by a handful of leading cattle industry organizations identified a need to turn up the heat in its messaging fight. Their highest priority was to demonstrate beef's positive sustainability message and key role in regenerative agriculture. It is highly likely the beef industry will continue to be threatened by legislation and/or regulations aimed at curbing greenhouse gas emissions, the document said. It went on, the task force believes it is more important than ever to aggressively promote the multiple advantages of beef and educate consumers on how beef fits into a healthy lifestyle and sustainable diet. And remember a few months ago how I found a science influencer who was being paid by the fossil fuel industry to promote propane on TikTok? Well, prepare yourselves for meat influencers. In a private video training session for beef industry influencers, Sarah Reese, NCBA's Senior Executive Director of Brand Marketing, described a plan that involved paid advertising on Google, Facebook, Reddit, YouTube, and Instagram, as well as video and audio ad spots on ESPN, Spotify, and Sirius XM Radio. According to strategy documents posted to the Beef Board's website, NCBA requested $9.1 million for content marketing and paid advertising this year, all of which will serve to improve beef's image and some of which will specifically communicate the net climate and environmental impact of beef production. And I'm not even kidding here. The writer of this piece took a Masters of Beef Advocacy course, an MBA course offered by the meat industry to literally train influencers on the talking points that downplay beef's role in climate change. Master of Beef Advocacy. Holy hell. Guys, I don't spend enough time on TikTok, so I absolutely need you to tell me if you see one of these meatfluencers in the wild. I want to look at them. I want to marvel. I want to be disgusted by them. Thank you. Anyway, all of this reminded me of something I stumbled upon a few months ago. I came across this discussion between George Monbiot and Anna Bradley about Russell Brand spreading far-right conspiracy theories. And I found it interesting that it was actually connected to the meat industry. Dutch scientists have been warning their government for decades that the meat industry was unsustainable because of the massive amounts of nitrate pollution caused by manure, for the most part. They were ignored because the meat lobby was too powerful, and they had convinced the government to just ignore the problem. After decades of hoping that this problem would simply disappear or be scienced out of existence, the government finally realized they had to do something. And because they had dragged their feet for so long, now they needed to take drastic action. They couldn't just slowly introduce the idea of cutting down on meat farming. And what they came up with to drastically try to turn things around was to ask farmers directly, stop farming meat, use your land for something else. And if you can't or don't want to, we will buy your land so you can get a bunch of money and go off and do something else. But white supremacists got a hold of this and they spun it out of control on shows like Tucker Carlson, where they claimed that the government wants to steal the farmers' land in order to house immigrants. And I found all of this very sad, obviously, but also fascinating because it had never occurred to me before that our inaction on climate change forces us to take more drastic action to try to correct it, which can then lead directly to a rise in fascism and far-right conspiracy theories. I'd really just never seen that connection before. So it's bad enough that the meat industry is, like the fossil fuel industry, actively trying to stop humanity from slowing climate change. But to make matters worse, they might be fueling far-right nationalism and terrorism. I'll end this on an interesting side note. Look at this graph from that Guardian piece that compares the carbon output of various foods. Cows bred for meat are the runaway winners, obviously, but number 2 is dark chocolate. So obviously, I spent a lot of time reading up on that, and apparently it's because of the clear cutting of forests. Loggers remove old-growth trees, which leaves behind soil that's rich for cocoa farming, but only for 5 or 10 years, at which point the soil is depleted and the farmers pick up and move to the next clear-cut acre of land. So yeah, I guess I'll add chocolate to the list of foods that I'm cutting back on because they're so bad for the environment. Of course, I do reserve the right to change my mind on that when Big Candy writes me $1 million check to come up with a study about how it's actually unethical to stop eating chocolate, because if everyone in the world all at once stops eating and purchasing chocolate, then a bunch of farmers in Côte d'Ivoire will starve to death. And that's the real ethical quandary. It's a pretty convincing argument, I think. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. If you loved the video, please subscribe. And if you think the world could use more videos like this and you happen to have a few bucks laying around, head to patreon.com/Rebecca and join an awesome community of nerds like the people whose names you see on the screen right now. Thanks.